everybody. Once again, I'm Lee McCracken Jr., aka Zorval Chan. We have Mars Video Cat here, and today I'm going to do a Torg Tuesday. So I had a comment in my Cyberpapacy, believe it was for the Torg Eternity Cyberpapacy review, and somebody asked, could this be a book used for writing a novel for a cyberpunk type game? They said they have limited options, I guess, that they weren't finding a lot of things other than just cyberpunk and that, and we're wondering if if you cut out the papacy part of the cyberpapacy, would there be enough information there to get ideas in mind? And I am all about homebrews, reskinning, making things your own. So I decided to make this video as kind of explaining what different Torg things you can use in either other games or other media, such as novels instead of game rule books and things like that, and how you can reskin and change things. So the three books that I kind of wanted to go over today was the Torg Eternity Cyberpapacy book, which recently came out. It should be available. And then the old Cyberpapacy book from the early 90s, and its companion book, the Godnet. So basically these two books here were kind of consolidated into here for various reasons. It's always nice to have one book that has everything that you need. I'm using my pencil as a marker. I only had the Godnet book for many, many years. The Cyberpapacy book I kept looking for, and it was like ridiculous on eBay, like $100 or something. And finally I found one cheap, so I was able to purchase it. It's been a while, but it did take me probably a decade or so to get it. So if you want to know kind of the main differences, if you take the papacy part out of these two books, what is that? And I would say these two books are a lot more crunchy. And if in your novel you would be wanting to make a cyberpunk type novel, like I said, taking out the church papacy part of the cyberpapacy and just leave the cyber part, but you wanted a foundation of rules that you don't necessarily mean rolling dice or anything to figure out how your game is, but just rules of this is how things work and this is how they build on each other and how to do that. And you want that crunch to build a framework for the literature. If you want kind of like people that do magic systems, you can have some really in-depth magic systems that are this is required, this is required, this is required, and you make sure everything fits and makes sense within that magic system. Or then you have other stories, kind of like fairy tales and stuff, which is just like, well, it's magic, so it works. So if you're leaning towards more of that systematic, you want things to build upon, I would recommend the original. And if you want more, not necessarily that, oh, it just works, but if you want more of the storytelling side of things or the overall view of how things work, then I would say this. Both books have various cyberware that is not just GodNet or VNet or whatever you're calling that interface where you hook into the virtual reality machine, whether you call them deckers or net runners or grid runners or whatever. You have that aspect. You also have the augmenting. Oh, I'm trying to figure out the word, as if you've already have a loss of a limb or part, and you have that. It's not really replacing because you're not taking it off to put something on. You're just adding prosthetics, that type of cyber wear. They both books have those. Both have costs. They have ways to get those. This goes into more detail of how long it takes you to fully recover from it, how long the surgery and things happen. This, for the game that it's made for, is more of a you buy the perk, you get it, and you're able to use it. Torg Eternity is set up, although both systems are set up in and a lot of people say movies, but I always think more TV series, because it's kind of like you can make them episodic, you can have a little mini-series going on, you have change of sceneries and stuff. To me, it fits more like, say, in the 1980s, like the A-Team, or Battlestar Galactica, or those type of TV shows like Knight Rider and Airwolf and all of those type of things. Both Torg Original and Torg Eternity fit that, in where you have scenes and you have acts. But this fits more of the between episodes. Either a lot of stuff happens, or what is comprised of one episode doesn't always affect any of the other ones going down the line. This, like I said, has those recovery. If you have surgery to replace or augment a piece of you, then you take wounds that you can't recover for X amount of time. And that is more of the shows and TV series that every week is based on the next one. So less, even though they both have episodes, it's not just a, here's this week's thing for the week, and this week is a completely other thing that they could even forget what they did in the previous week, that type of thing. Both ways work for this, but for this it is more of the, here is the repercussions, the consequences, good and bad, of your whole thing going through it. So if you decide to get cyberware and you don't start with it, you're going to be in a less productive state for a while in game, unless your game master is like 3 months pass by. This one, you buy the perk, you spend the money, and you get it. Also, the way that this is set up, each perk costs more experience to get. So to get cyberware that is not spying on you by the Cyberpapacy, and you can use, whenever I say Cyberpapacy, if you're taking out the papacy, you can call it corporations, you can call it governments, whatever the big brother type thing is, the bad organization, you just replace Cyberpapacy with that. Here, if you don't want that big brother aspect spying on you through your cyberware, you use experience, you buy perks, and each one costs more. So if you want something where it's harder, the more you get, the harder it is to add more to it, that system is kind of built into here. What's built into this one is the old, and I mean old as in it's an older way of thinking, not that it's not worthy of anything or that it has less value, but this has the rules for cyberpsychosis. This has rules for what happens if you have a lot of cyberware in your personage and you get triggered by something and what effects might happen. This one is based off of card play in game, so if you're not using it as a game material, you're using it as a novel, it's less it's a lot less defined, where if you want to have a basis to figure out that type of thing, and maybe not in your novel or setting specifically write this many points, but you want on an index card or on your Excel spreadsheet, and you want to kind of figure out and be able to say this person has this much cyberware, so people are kind of looking at them a little bit weird, of like, oh, they might trip out and have a cyberpsychosis event, that type of thing, then I would recommend this. So with my wonderful little ribbon that I love that all the Torg Eternity books come with, I got the picture of the GodNet. And again, take the papacy out of it, take the God out of the GodNet, call it whatever net you want, or grid, or what have you. And you have this picture here of how the interface works. You can see that's a really kind of simple way. The lands of non-biblical terminology, those are what your non-sanctioned grid runners, net runners, deckers, whatever you want to call them, are considered. So these are the nodders. Those the people that do it normally. Those are your flockers, kind of just your normal people that hook up through a normal interface through their church. And then, whoops, they go over here, and then they want to do kind of the dark web type stuff here. And if you want to break into the corporation stuff there, you go through there and down into the secret stuff down here. So that's basically how that plays out, and it's very loose and fast and loose, I guess you could say. It's very much the game master kind of figures out where things are, puts the drama and those type of areas, and it goes along, and it goes smooth. And I'm not knocking it in any way, shape, or form. It's just a different experience than this game. If you want more structure, then I will now be able to take out my pencil as my bookmark, and you have kind of a legend. So this is the mapping symbols. And they're all very, if I can get really close, they're all kind of really churchy, biblical, with crosses and stuff. But you could easily take this and make your own symbols for your own game. Maybe even put those as chapters, a chapter heading. But then here's kind of a base of a map of the GodNet, or whatever net you want to do. So you can have very quickly, I moved from Paris to, and my French is very bad, but like, I don't know, le français, something like that. But you can, in one step, go from a major city to kind of a minor city or something. I guess that's why that is the two horizontal bar cross, and that is the single. But then you go over here, which is kind of a login place. So this is kind of your first step into getting things interesting. So kind of like going from city to a town should be pretty simple. Getting to the access point should be simple. And then here, you're going through that to the actual church. So if you're doing a non-church place, this could be your corporation, the corporation kind of entry point. And then when you start breaking in, then you go here. And I'm trying to see, they have a difficulty number. Here it says DN15. So that's a pretty difficult. And that's just to get into the first kind of place that's a little hard to access. And then each one of those little things there we go, better, DN18, DN20, DN22. So each time, instead of the quick city to town to log in to the church, now you start having to get through whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it firewalls, if you want to call it, put some malware in there or some defense type computer stuff, that's where all those are accessed, and all the little hacking stuff happens with those difficulty numbers. So again, even if you don't have, you don't want to put game terms into your novel, that will at least give you an idea of when you're writing how hard things could be. And then again, you can have where they have like scanners and cameras and doors. So this would be breaking into, I guess, to an access point that would give you access to change those things. So if you physically need to get in there and you want those scanners to shut down, or the cameras to malfunction, or the doors to open, that's where you go. And then when you go in here, you see that that's kind of a book to symbolize the important hidden information. And if we go back here, then we can see that's called a vault cell there. So you have all that. And it's one of those things you can just change that symbols to match your own. Like I said, I just imagine in a novel format, your chapter header could be whatever symbols you come up with. But here, when this book came out, they say cyberspace, the Matrix, the grid. So way before the Matrix movie came out, they had that talking about grids, which later became a Tharcold aspect. Tharcold would be another Torg, which when I posted the comment, I wasn't thinking about, but Tharcold would be another Torg book that you could use. Very different, especially in the original Torg, actually both Torgs, but the original Torg is very different than the Cyberpapacy. The new Torg, Eternity, is very different than the new Cyberpapacy, and they themselves are extremely different from each other. The old Tharcold grid, even though it was called the grid, was individual. It was very reminiscent in my mind of how the newer Battlestar Galactica took place, where when everything was online, the Cylons were able to just take over, so they had to make things separate that they didn't connect. And that's how the grid was. The grid was you physically had to get to the place, and that place itself, that complex, whether as a corporation, again, you want to take the techno-demon side out of it and just make it more of a gritty Earth. Have it so that they're not connected. There's no really internet anymore because everybody is effing with everybody else. And you have these places where to break in, you physically have to go there. And once you physically break in, then you can enter the computer, and they have kind of a intranet instead of a internet. So that was what grids were in the original Torg. In Torg Eternity, the Tharcold grid or net is known as the Kerr, which is basically hell, a digitized hell. And people don't like to go in there, and that's something that if you watch my newer Tharcold in Torg Eternity review, people say, oh, what's the Kerr going to be like? And my response as one of the writers was, you don't want to go there. Well, but you have a template that says you can go there. Even those people don't want to go there. Our mega adventure, which I ran through, Roll Hit Die, you can watch that. The net runner, the grid runner, the NPC that is built to do that refused to go in and help the party. She stayed outside, monitored what they were doing, and helped them that way, but she's not stupid enough to go there. And it's basically, think of what would happen if a virtual reality where your spirit or soul or whatever you have in your consciousness went into Hellraiser Hell. And that is what the Kerr is. So it is different than the old grid, and the old grid is really interesting if you want to have that physical aspect where you have to physically get there and break into each company's intranet and manipulate things that way. Or you have either the cyberpapacies where you can access anywhere if they're part of the godnet, and it's all an intranet, internet type thing, not intranet. Sometimes a little confusing. Intra meaning local, specific, and inter meaning lots of different things interconnected. So if you want to go with that way, you go for the godnet. And again, if you want to have it more of a, I want to have more story and less technical aspects of it, but I still want maybe a price range of things and figuring out a power level before things, then I absolutely would recommend Torg Eternity's Cyberpapacy. If I was doing something of more where I wanted hardcore crunch, where even if the characters in the books aren't saying, oh, you have a cyber value of 15, but you as the author want that so you can keep things in a consistent manner, then I would go with the original tool. So hopefully that would help you out as a how you can use Torg and Torg Eternity to inspire you to do your own thing. Whether that's another game that you're looking for inspiration, whether it's a novel, whether it's a short story, or whatnot, always get inspired by other things. There are basically no new ideas. Everything is reskinned. Even if you don't know it, it's been done before. There is a personal example that I read of a Roman folk story which has a bunch of people sitting around a fire, and they've campfire some Roman soldiers. They've eaten, and it's about a witch and stuff. And somebody's chest burst open and a sponge falls out. And it's very obvious to me, even if Alien wasn't based off of that scene of people sitting around and eating and having a normal-ish type of interaction, and suddenly something falls out of somebody's chest or bursts out of a chest. The concepts, even if independent, were done centuries apart. So don't worry. Take the IP out, keep the ideas, let it simmer, add a little of this and a little of that, and come up with something that is your own, and put your own stamp on it. So having said that, once again, I'm Lee McCracken Jr., aka Zorval John Mustang Guru, and until next time, I will catch you later.